So I noticed that you've been doing some research there, which is good.
What did you like? What did you see this week that you liked in the world of AI?
I actually quite like the Perplexity shop with Perplexity. Did you see that?
Yeah, because we talked about Perplexity, and I still sitting on the rubric of I still don't get it. So hit me up with some good news from Perplexity, the world you love.
Well, I think the thing is search is changing, right? We're having this distilled version of search. The question is whether a company like Perplexity is going to be that new way of doing things, or whether Google will just add some of these things in. This is a sort of first challenge in a long time, right? Around a new way of thinking about how we get our results, and Perplexity are taking that as a step further, and essentially you can shop. It'll help you to distill and find find what are the options, do some research for you. If you think about what we're doing often, we're doing our own research. So I think this distilling of research is really what's happening with Perplexity.
Did they launch already? Can you show it?
Yeah, so Perplexity, launched this shop without limits, shop with Perplexity, and so essentially, what we've been doing for a long time. When I'm going to go and buy something, is I Google it, I look at the various options, or I read a blog, or I do, it takes time to collate all this information. And
I like it. I like it much more than the other nonsense. This just looks cool. You think it's going to catch?
well, look, the thing is this a threat to Google, or is it a threat to Amazon, or is it a threat to neither? And I think that's where you can clearly see the big players. I'm going to sit back and let Perplexity just do that. The question is, will Google just add this functionality in and pretty much put this to bed, or will they continue to innovate in what they're doing? And so I think that's the challenge. I think here is to go. People that have this incumbent were already Googling. If they had this, will I go and use something else? That's what I think the play. Can they disrupt that? I think is the big thing. Definitely useful.
I think. Look, let's see. So I think it's. We talked about the agents able to infer my preference, know more about me, and make a decision, because it's technology can make a decision. Technology that remember things. It's intelligence. It's a little bit like an agent that you say, "Hey, I'd like a chair. You know my style. You know my budget. Just get me a good chair." But you still want to decide. So hopefully, instead of seeing through 10,000 chairs and deciding on the one you want, you can see 5 and it's a good price. There's a lot of value in that technology. And if Perplexity are bringing it to market, you bet that either someone would grab it, or, that I think there's going to be appeal to that. Now, the question is, are they going to be able to get market share? Are they going to be able to get into that, what is very crowded and very busy market? And they're kind of competing with, the big retailers of the world, right? Of course, the Amazon. So it looks good. It definitely looks like I think right now it looks like they have some really cool technology, and I'm curious if someone's going to buy it. And, it's something you want to track and monitor. Like, will this in a few months become just another thing that was launched in the AI frenzy that never caught, or it will be one of those things that really change consumer behavior? Would you use it?
I mean, look, I do use it. I do use.
You use it? Did you buy with it? Not yet.
Well, I'll give you a real life example. I have a whole regime of stuff that I take. Fish oil being one of them, which I just ran out of, and I wanted to find out what are some alternatives, because the brand that I normally get, I use Perplexity to do a thing. But I also, asked. That was before they launched the shop thing. But I asked it to do some research, provide me the links to where I can buy it, and it just made it easier. But it's not to say I couldn't do that with ChatGPT as well, right? And so to me, I think their big thing, and we've seen this with some other players as well, is it better to have a Perplexity subscription than having all these other? So I've got a ChatGPT, I've got an Anthropic. Am I going to pay for Perplexity on top of that? And so I think this is where we're going with this.
If they're making money out of the shopping, transaction fees, they may not need to charge you on a monthly subscription base.
Yeah, I don't know the exact model of what they have. I know this is available to their pro users. So some of this functionality is to making it, you're paying for the privilege to be able to have some of those results distilled, to saving you time. I think there's some free shipping even so this sort of thing could be quite interesting But I think it's in the Amazon realms as well, which is like, Amazon Prime has been a massive winner for them, right? I use Amazon a lot because of Prime. I know something's going to arrive. It takes the complexity out. If I know that I could use Perplexity, for example, and something's going to arrive tomorrow, or I know it's covered in the cost, I definitely consider it. So I think that's a good play as well, like just that model. And I think this is it. This is a slightly different business model. They're trying to create something. I do like the innovation that's coming out there.
I like it as well. It looks look, it's the vision of agents. That's a vision of agent technology that it's great to see coming into the world, right? It's what we've been thinking about. Let me show you something I like. So Mr. Gary Tan, President and CEO of Y Combinator, is showing you a startup that went from 0 to 500 in ARR in 8 weeks. Lots of people do due diligence on private equity, but this is the first one that outputs all the analysis natively to Excel files that analysts and principals can understand and modify from formulas upward. What I like it actually is not just the little, okay, cool, they have a slick video animation, but actually check out how much product there is on top of the LLM here. And that's a great example of, in my opinion, that not everything is just a wrapper around an LLM. It's not the universal interface is now a chat. If you're doing due diligence and you want to use AI, you need a product around that. You can't just throw questions into an AI and hope for the best, because it's not the nature of the problem. And I think it's a great example to a lot of stars that we see. And there's this tension between, how much interface do I need here? Where's the IP? Is the IP in the model? People talk about like the model is going to consume all the IP and subsume all the IP of people who build apps on top of them. Just like operating systems, slowly add features that used to be companies. Do you know what I'm talking about? So that's a good example.
So I'm still like, so what are we showing? What are you showing me here? What does it do exactly? It helps you to do what?
You're a private equity company and you want to analyze a business, or imagine you're an analyst looking at a publicly listed business, and your job is to do research on it. You're an apple.com Apple analyst or something. Your life is made out of crazy big spreadsheets, moving things from PDF to download CSVs, uploading into Excel, all that crap. What if there was a way to what if there was a way to streamline on that with an app that is powered by AI that does it for you? I think is noteworthy here. And first of all, I mean, the one thing that's noteworthy is that it's claimed that they made $500,000 in ARR in 8 weeks, which is, the dream of most founders that we meet, right? So question, why is it working? Why do people pay for it?
I'll tell you my takeaway, and we've had this same logic with some investments we've made recently. It's high value. It's high value, brings a lot of those things in there. If you imagine the time that it takes, this is that low hanging fruit. You have some highly paid people who are otherwise spending a lot of time doing this. And, this is where we're going to have in every sector. I think particularly where there's a high value, it makes sense. And even if it's not, 100% accurate, I was on a call yesterday with a customer for someone that we're doing some DD on. And they talked about the fact they were using this AI product to filter out the negative. They said they have to have a human in the loop still. They're not going to trust it. But what they were doing as they're using the product, instead of 8 people reviewing this product, so they're doing some reviews of some applications, let's say, that are coming into their organization. Before, all 8 people used to do that review. Now they get the AI to do it, and they get one human to review the AIs that are negative, that are giving them negative, saving them 7 people's time. And then on the positive side, they're doing some other things to say, is there any bias in what they're doing? And they're finding that really useful as well, to say, well, we've done a fair job because AI in theory is not biased. I think it's biased its own way. But I thought this was really interesting that, this is the same thing. There's just so much, high value in what's being produced. I don't think it's all there probably, but it saves them a lot of time. And that's where we're at. And this will only in theory get better. And so, yeah, I think it's a great use case. I think this applies in so many industries. That's probably my main point. And I think the higher the value, the more expensive that resource or that person is, the more this is just going to make more and more sense in every industry.
So what I think is noteworthy here is that it's a LLM powered startup and there's no chat interface. And I think that's really interesting, right? Because we saw lots and lots of the startups we looked at. They start with some sort of prompt. They take it from there with prompt engineering, and it works in certain cases. But it's also easy to make the point that if that's a thin wrapper around your model, and then people are worried about the IP being subsumed by models when the models get ever smarter. But this is an example of a product, what we call vertical AI or SaaS 2.0, which is clearly business problem. IP is clearly visual. Like you see that it's a UI layer that is important to the product, and it's not easily replicable because someone can just do another prompt just like you. And I think that's a great example of a great startup in an AI powered startup or vertical AI. And I think it's worth noting. There's no chat interface. It's very rich on the UI side. It solves a very particular problem for a well understood enterprise problem and niche. Enterprise customer. I like it.
Yeah, no, same. And I think the other, when we talk about moats, I think the UI and the process, following a niche process, understanding that is something that I think is going to happen more, and that's why we think that's the opportunity as well in so many sectors. So yeah, great. Looks really interesting. Well, look, we've been talking about agents for a while, and we've talked a lot about what what's sort of been happening with OpenAI and what Google are doing. But Microsoft also just had an announcement around their sort of Copilot strategy. I think it's interesting to see what they're doing, their sort of take on their agents, and I think they've got a massive advantage. If we think about what they're doing, they have a 70% of Fortune 500 companies are using Microsoft 365, and so they're already really well placed to take advantage of this. And so I think they're starting to really, I guess, build how corporates access that, what they can do in that space. And so summarizing emails, we start to see this across all the platforms. So how do you choose who you go with, whether it be Google, Microsoft, or so the question is, are any of these, for me, is it just going to be the status quo in what happens now? Are people just going to keep stick Microsoft to doing a good enough job? I don't see, in terms of some of the actual practical use cases, when I've seen here with some of the large corporates, they're not really using it in earnest because they don't know how to use it, or it's so restricted. But they've got the sort of prime position because they already have the corporates using this. And so, if you start to look at what some of the things they've been putting into the products, it's been, been quite interesting. They've got a whole range of things around transformation, how you can use the various parts of their Copilot with agents. And so I think this is maturing in the way they view it, and making it work for partnering with people like ServiceNow, Workday. There's this sort of automation that we've talked about happening, this agentic approach, but using a lot of what they have. And so we have I kind of think three sort of areas that are three sort of big areas that whether you look at OpenAI, what Google are doing, what some of the startups are doing, but also what Microsoft are going to really have a strong position. And I kind of feel like they're a little bit like comparing Slack to Teams. Do they have to do it? They kind of got a product that's not quite as good, but is good enough that they can bundle it, they can throw it in, add a bit more onto my subscription. Like it's hard to disrupt. I think that's my sort of take here is I don't know it's the best products, but I do think it's very useful given the position they have in that corporate space. So yeah, what's your sort of thoughts on that?
I look. Every disruption. They say it's a race between the incumbent adding that capability as a feature and the challenger or the startup trying to capture some market share. And if the incumbent is able to move, that new capability is becoming a feature in the existing client product, install base, and game over for the startups, the disruptor. And if they're moving slowly, or if it's perceived to be a low value it's perceived to be a low value at the beginning segment, and then later it can become a big value. Then you still have an opportunity. And I think the Slack team, Microsoft team, is a great example. It's happened 1,000 times before, and will happen 1,000. Look, Microsoft Productivity Suite is the largest installed base software in the world, or something like that. Google Docs, number 2, distance 2, right? Office is by far still most prevalent in enterprise. So to expect that they won't respond to the AI revolution by adding AI features to their suite is, I think, naive. When the whole revolution started, it wasn't really clear what are we talking about when we talk about AI features. Now I think it's coming to shape. We can start seeing these things, right? So they look like a big button on the home screen that takes you through essentially a wizard, good old Microsoft wizards from the 90s. This time it's just a much more intelligent wizard that can actually do something that's much greater than it used to be. But I think that manifests itself to, you have a lot of startups that were, shallow startups, are going to be subsumed by not just the models, but the platform on which they were trying to build. Okay, so it's expected. I wouldn't say I'm not surprised. I'm impressed with it. I would like to see how it plays.
Yeah, look, I think once again, I think there's opportunities for people to build on this as well. So I think there'll be solutions that'll come off the back of this, and once again, they've got a big developer community. So I think it's just really interesting to see their AI strategy. It's a moving target, like everyone's running. I think it'll be really good to see. But I think the key thing for startups as well is to go, you can't play where these guys are going to play. And if your full business is just around those developing the agents that way, I wonder if between what's going to happen with OpenAI and with what Microsoft are doing, what Google are doing, how you develop a business around, if that's purely where you're competing. I think this is, like I say, I think for me this highlights not wanting to play in that space if you can avoid it, unless there's something really unique. Cool. What else? What else has been happening?
Talking about challenges to operating systems, OpenAI came up with, remember computer use? So this is the OpenAI version of computer use. And what are we seeing here? It's, a chatbot that sits on top of your operating system that sees the context of what you're doing, basically reads the screen, gets an input stream from the operating system about the stuff that's going on in your computer, and is able to, you can now, this guy is, for example, building actually an app in Xcode, which is Apple SDK for software development, and using basically, instead of copying and the context in and out of a chat interface, is basically using the LLM to actually have a real-time view of what it does on the screen and able to reason and help it in context. I think that's a glimpse to the future of how AI is going to be integrated into operating systems. Ask yourself, is it realistic that OpenAI will basically be that technology that sits on the operating system and is able to give you AI capabilities to everything you do? Or will the operating systems build that capability, bake it into the operating system itself? I think it will look like browsers. So there will be the native AI, and there will be the one AI you can also plug. So in the same way that Microsoft ships with Internet Explorer or Edge, and Mac ships with Safari, but you can still download Chrome. I think there's a good chance it will play in a similar way, right? So you'll have the AI sitting that you can download from OpenAI, but there's also going to be the native series, sitting in the operating system.
Yeah, I'm actually, I think we're in agreement. You've even talked about this before, where this is going to be embedded. We're seeing this being more and more embedded. I think there's a lag time between people knowing how to use it and knowing what to do with it. But I think I think it was last week or week before, we talked about how people were using computer use to watch a video, save people time. I think we're going to see human creativity, good and bad, come out of this, in all of these things in a really interesting way. I'm really interested in just how this plays out. Excited and scared. I met I met with someone last week actually who works in the cyber security space, and they were talking about some of the implications of what's going to happen here, and they're building all these things on the other side of this as well. So I think this is, once again, we're moving so quickly. Implications are not even known. There's going to be good, bad, and otherwise in there. So yeah, really interesting and great to see them. This sort of arms race. This is what I'm loving as well. It's everyone's doing something and someone else is upping them in it. And so for us as technologists and as investors, this is really important to just understand how do you jump on board with this? How do you build businesses? You can't sit back. But I think this is what we're seeing, and I feel like I live in another world sometimes, that everyone's running in what we're seeing. Everyone's doing all these great things. And this is the time to be building businesses. Like, it's exciting. It's time to be investing in them. And so I feel like, this is another example this week on something that's going to keep changing, provide opportunities for people to do more and more effectively. So it's pretty cool. Just want to look. I thought it might be good just to sort of talk about. We had a Dazed and Diffused event in Sydney, our number 14. Really great turnout. These events are starting to turn into really, like, I think they're a thing now. Google partnered with us on that one. That was great to have their support. 3 really great startups. I thought like it was really interesting. And what I particularly liked was that we had a mix of probably 50-50 in terms of gender. And for a tech event, it was nice to have a good mix of men and women in the room. And yeah, I had some really great feedback from that. We're now doing another one in Brisbane in a few weeks. So if you're in Brisbane at all and you're watching this, or if you'll share this with people, we're having another Daze Diffused on I think the 4th of December. So hit us up and come and get in before it all gets booked out. But how did you find the event? What did you enjoy there, or not?
I thought it was good. But I think the caliber of the startups we're seeing over time it's improving. It's interesting. At the beginning, it was the first event, it was definitely exploration. You see people exploring like what the technology can do. People, we were in the early events. We were still very excited about just look at the AI can generate this thing. And I think now it's there's been a maturation and of understanding of how this new platform can be used to create enduring businesses. And I liked some of the startups that presented. There was a spectrum from creative to very enterprisey or government technology. Pretty cool presentations. And definitely it feels like there's a buzz in the air.
Excellent. And well, look, we had a discussion in there about doing something in an international Daze and Diffuse in France, in Paris. So let's see if that ever can work out. That'll be awesome. Are you going to come if we do one?
Yeah, of course I'm going to come. You have to pay for the flight, but of course.
But look, another week in AI. I've enjoyed this discussion today, just around. Sometimes I feel like it feels like the same things are happening. I feel like it's continually getting better. There's this layer upon layer upon layer, and I think we're going to have some really big moments in the coming months that we just go, holy crap! We talked about this. Now we're seeing it. We're seeing people apply it, and I'm just looking forward to that. So that's another week in AI. Great talking to you, Drew. I'll see you next week.
See you next week.